Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Perpetual Chess. We will introduce our guest momentarily. First, I wanted, as always, to give thanks to our presenting chess education sponsors, Chessable.com. One of the topics we'll be discussing today is Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen. You all may know he's got many courses on Chessable, both about him and by him. Grind Like a Grandmaster, his collaboration with Grandmaster David Howell. Magnus Carlsen Endgame Virtuoso, which is not by Magnus, but an excellent illustration of his legendary endgame technique. And Fight Like Magnus, about the Sveshnikov Sicilian, one of my personal favorites. You can also check out my other favorites. I'll link to that in the show notes. But we are joined this week by a Norwegian legend. He is a 9-time Norwegian chess Olympian, ranked number 16 in the world at his peak, also 9-time Norwegian champion, including this year, 41 years after his first title, which he won at age 15, beating out younger established grandmasters like Jon Ludvig Hammer and Arjen Tarji. He now holds the record as the youngest and oldest Norwegian national chess champion. As if that's not enough, he was also a professional footballer who played striker for Norway's national team. He's an accomplished trainer, including one of the first trainers of Magnus Carlsen. He wrote a great book about coaching young Carlsen, now published by New in Chess, called How Magnus Carlsen Became the Youngest Grandmaster in the World. So it's my great honor to welcome to the program Grandmaster Simen Agdestein. Welcome, Simen.
Thank you. It's an honor to be asked. Not so many ask me anymore any longer.
For interviews, yeah. I saw your interview with Judith Polgar on YouTube a couple years ago, but there weren't as many as I expected, at least in English.
Yeah.
But I am really excited to talk. I mean, you've had such a fascinating career. Just for listeners, as we get started, I should warn you might hear my voice is going a little bit. I'm healthy, but for some reason my voice is not super strong, but we're going to power through. And Simen actually is recovering from COVID. So we're going to be troopers here, but we apologize in advance. So, Simen, I wanted to begin with your recent national champion. We have a lot of adult listeners, many of them amateur chess players, a few professionals as well, but we're always looking for inspiration, and it's quite inspiring that you're holding off these young bucks and still playing at the top level in your country. So I was curious how this title feels in comparison to your 8 other national championship titles.
I must admit it felt very good this time. Much better than the others, I guess. Well, the first time was special, I guess. But the reason is that it's not so important with the title itself. And now I'm just concerned about my head, if my head still works. I'm 56, so you're a little bit worried about things. But the brain was working, and that's what I'm happy with.
Yeah, you mentioned in your interview with Judith that you feel like you miss stuff more often than you used to.
I missed up so many things, but the others do too. That's the thing about it. I make horrible mistakes, but so do the others.
And did you always feel like you made horrible mistakes, or is that only in more recent years?
I've always felt like that, but in more recent years, I kind of accepted it. It's just part of being a chess player. Even the best in the world, make horrible blunders, and that's quite good to see sometimes. Actually, it's part of being a chess player. Making horrible things.
Yeah,
and you have to find a way to deal with that fact.
Was there like a moment where that helped you accept this, or was it more of a gradual process? Or
it's quite recently, actually, that I kind of accepted that making horrible mistakes is part of a chess player's life. Only a few years ago, I kind of came settled with that.
And you feel that's helped your play?
It helped my temperament. It's more stable. It's just I just play chess. It goes. Sometimes I win. Sometimes I'm lucky. Sometimes I'm not, and it doesn't matter so much. And it's a little bit stressful with the Norwegian Championship because the only thing that matters is winning.
Right.
I don't count second places in the Norwegian Championship. So that stresses the thing a little bit. But now, but I hadn't played at all last year. I won last year too, and since then I hadn't played one long game turn at all. So because my goal has more been to simply have a nice, a stable life, calm life, I'm not so obsessed about playing. I go with my students. I'm a chess coach. I look at chess every day, but most of the times, or almost every time, I don't play myself. I just follow my students. But now, in just a few days, I'm going to Riga and I'm going to Barcelona after that in August, and now I'm going to play myself.
Okay.
And my attitude is that it doesn't really matter. I'm just going there to play and see how it goes.
Yeah, I think we all can learn from that attitude. And were you planning on playing these tournaments even before your recent success?
Yeah, kind of. But that's I think it's less stress in my life in general these days, so that affects the decision too. That I might just as well play a little bit chess. I have nothing else to do, kind of.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. And so you mentioned you hadn't played a year prior to this tournament. Did you do any training leading up to it?
I was a bit worried. Last year, I prepared by playing a tournament in Krakow in Poland, a wonderful tournament. It was very warm. I had to withdraw from the tournament 2 rounds before. I regretted that a lot. I felt very bad about that. But it was so incredibly hot. It was 30 degrees plus. And but that I think was good preparation. This time I played absolutely nothing, so I was worried. But somehow I didn't score that enormously. I scored 6.5 points. Last year I scored 8 out of 9 and won with 1.5 point margin. And but now it was much stronger this time. It was Arjan Tar was there, Evgeny Romanov was there, the Russian who's now representing Norway. So now it's quite a good field actually.
Yeah.
And
you
not least, I have a student Elham. I don't know if you noticed him. Elham Abdulov.
Afghan roots, is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think he's born in Norway, and he's 18 years old, and very, very talented.
That's great. Well, I know there's been seismic change in how chess is perceived in Norway, in part due to your legacy and, of course, Magnus's legacy. So not surprising to see a lot of strong players at this point. But Simen, I still want to hear, so leading up to the tournament, I know that you're doing chess almost every day in your capacity as a trainer, but did you do any specific training?
I played online. That's all I did.
Blitz
I
or
just
what?
I played on the web. Pardon?
Did you play speed chess or slower games?
3-0 actually.
Oh, okay.
It's not really my thing. I lose very often on time. It's impossible for me to prepare openings without actually having an opponent to prepare against. I just accepted that too.
Yeah.
So I thought I just look at the younger generation. They play a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't do that when I was young, of course, but perhaps it works out since Nakamura, LM, Firuza, it seems they just play enormously on the internet, and it seems to work for them. So I thought I might try that this time as preparation.
Okay, so the secret is revealed. And when you do this, are you doing it mainly as a way to sort of test out your openings, or is it like
no, just to play, just to get my brain going. My openings weren't that good in the championship. It was quite bad actually. They were quite bad, but it's not so much about openings these days anyway. It's more like getting out of your opponent's preparation is more important than having great preparation yourself.
Yeah, I think that's really an important insight. And when you play these games online, Simen, these 3-minute games, are you reviewing them much or just play and go to the next one?
I should have. My ideal, I think, is to play maybe 1 hour or maybe a half, maybe just a couple of games, have a look at the games on ChessBase, prepare a little bit, and go forth and back between ChessBase and online playing. That's what I believe is the way I should do it. But it's kind of an addiction. I just happen to just to sit there. And I'm not sure it's healthy, but because it takes a lot of time. But I thought, okay, I'll try it this way. I haven't done it this way before, so this was kind of a new thing for me.
Yeah, so far so good, and it seemed to pay off in your play. Grandmaster Jonathan Spielman, who I know you know, wrote about your victory for chessbase.com, and he highlighted your game against I am Frederick Kassin. You had this knight takes f7, very sharp tactic.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, did you feel sharp at the board, and like how much of that was prep and versus
Uh,
inspiration?
Absolutely no prep at all. Absolutely nothing. I just play c4 and see what happens. So,
Okay.
so absolutely no prep. Oh, definitely not. Um, it was a bit risky because McQueen was trapped. There were kind of no way back. But I had some emergency break. If the tactics weren't working, I thought I could always. It was a way to kind of get an equal position there. But then I suddenly found some very nice tricks with knight g5.
And you
Um,
already saw knight takes f7 when you played knight g5?
when I played knight g5, I kind of seen everything. That was then it was clear.
Okay. And
I knew I was winning then.
impressive. And do you feel like you're always that sharp these days, or did you feel like you were having like a particularly focused day?
Not at all always that sharp, especially not at the end of the games. In one game, I simply committed suicide. Inexplainable. And my brain just stopped working in one of the games. And that happens sometimes. It irritated me enormously. I mean, enormously. I couldn't sleep at night, and well, I'm really able to be irritated. But I was lucky to get back after that horrible suicide thing.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, we all deal with that. So, and you've mentioned you feel like you've gotten better at dealing with that. So, are
Yeah,
there any tricks in particular, or is it just you show up the next day and hope things
it,
go better?
it's no tricks. It's just an acceptance. So that's how it is. It's the same with everyone. And if I look at the other players, it's the same with them. They also missed great opportunities. So I think I missed two great opportunities in this tournament, which meant I could perhaps have had 1 point more. But the others is the same with the others. So I think it's the same with everyone, even the best in the world, as I mentioned.
Yeah, yeah, you
It's
should
not
not.
often they play perfect chess. Even Magnus has started making mistakes these days. Before I thought, for instance, before I used to mention Caruana, I thought he was making quite a lot of mistakes considering his strength. But still, well, I'm not sure where he's listed now, but at that time I thought he's number 2 in the world, making so many mistakes. Uh, yeah, helps us, inspires others.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned you're training many top players. Of course, your institute in Norway is legendary. I read online that you're training football as well. Is that accurate? In addition to your chess
Uh,
clinics?
uh, well, my own, well, I mean, really all my students seem to love football. So we play football or soccer every Wednesday, actually. Every Wednesday morning, we start with playing soccer or an hour or an hour and a half. But that's just for fun. But some years ago, I had a couple of years as a football trainer, as a soccer trainer,
Okay.
which was very funny. I loved it. It was my daughter. They were 13 and 14 years old. So I found it very, very funny, and I liked it. So I'm considering returning as a football trainer somehow. And I liked the idea of starting from kind of scratch. And when they were 13 girls, they were not good, but they improved enormously. And following that improvement was very, very funny. I love that.
Yeah, and I did it give you any insights into what you do as a chess trainer?
Yeah, I kind of you follow the same principles actually, but that's more the insight as a chess trainer that I brought onto the football. Like it's just about playing a lot, having fun, having a good atmosphere, kind of basic things that's good for whatever you do. I think as a trainer.
And so you're, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of your institute in Norway is that it's kind of for young, very talented players. So it's not like short little classes, it's kind of longer sessions. Is that right?
Well, it's a sports school.
Right.
At our department, it's 360 students over 3 years. There are about 30 students in each class. And in the chess class, I have a quota of 5 players. So altogether, this year I had 16 players, 16 chess players over 3 years. It's a high school, a 3-year program from 16 till 18, approximately.
Okay, and
So
five, and sorry, six per, sorry, so 16 to 18 age, and how many per class?
5.
Okay. And
altogether per year. 5 class per year.
And they're
altogether,
they're there with you basically all day, each day?
No, it's basically a couple of hours every morning.
Okay.
And the rest of the day, they go to take ordinary subjects.
Gotcha. Okay. And what sort of, so you have a lot of time with them compared to a lot of teachers. So you mentioned you want it to be fun, but so how do you divide that time? Is it some lecture, some blitz, or mostly lecture? Do you give them puzzles or all of the above?
Yeah, the big challenge is to keep them engaged because they're all different. Some people like puzzles, some like studies, someone just want to play, and most don't like to listen for very long.
Right.
So a general thing is to talk as little as possible. The same principle goes for football. Talk as little as possible. And practice as much as possible. So we often start with a puzzle. Sometimes it's easy, but for instance, we can start a class with solving puzzles somehow. It could be anything, just absolutely anything. It could be a very difficult study. Just the exercises at chess.com or leeches are wonderful. There's no need to make it difficult. So maybe an hour of solving things, maybe an hour on one game, and then the time is gone. And maybe we look at a game of my students, but it is impossible to look at all their games anyway because there are so many and there's so many games. But I try to be there when they play, so it's possible for them to go through the games with me during tournaments, which I hope would be interesting, but actually it isn't. Most of my students doesn't seem to be very interested in going through the games with me after I played it, which I think is very stupid of them. But that's actually the fact. That's how it is. So when I go to tournaments before, I very often just get a little bit bored because I don't have much to do, actually.
Now, Simen, you hear so much in the received wisdom of chess about how important it is to go over games, but you've got these top young players who it's hard to do. You wrote in your book, I mean, Magnus competed a ton, but didn't necessarily review every game instantly. So do you think that for younger players in particular, maybe the playing is even more important than the review?
I think playing is the main thing. And with chess-based and computers, it's possible to do almost everything on their own. But I think it helps a lot going through the games with a Grandmaster or with me. But not everyone seemed to listen to me, to put it that way.
Yeah.
Magnus listened to everything I said, I think. He became world champion. I wish the others could have listened to put it that way. But some people do listen, and we have produced another world champion. Arjen Tar became world junior champion while he was at my school. And I think we have 11 grandmasters at the moment from my school, which is not so bad. Norwegian standard.
Now, you say that Magnus listened to you, but he told a story, and you also mentioned this in your book. When he was interviewed by Lex Friedman, he said you would try to give him puzzles, and he was just like, this is boring, I don't want to do it. But then he would take your books instead and just read every book. So in a sense, he wasn't doing what you're saying. It was more like you found a mutual understanding of the way that he preferred to pursue chess. Is that a correct characterization?
Well, he was a little resistant when he started giving me exercises, solving mate in 2 moves. But then soon he discovered that he was incredibly good at that as well. I think he had some kind of fear of not being the best, or it was a new thing for him. But when he kind of got started, he was tremendous in that as well. So he was tremendous in absolutely every aspect, of course. And he read books. I have a huge library with lots of books. I mean, really huge, and everything new I have. But modern players don't read very much, which surprises me. But I've heard that Nakamura doesn't read that much either. So I kind of accepted that there are many ways to deal with it. So that's kind of just something I kind of have accepted. There are people are different. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything in particular. Just do something.
Yeah, I think especially when you're young, that tends to be true. And so Magnus, of course, read all these books. And sorry, one sec. So Simen, you mentioned that it was evident that Magnus could do anything he put his mind to. Both Judith, when she interviewed you, and Jonathan Spielman in one of his columns mentioned that you would go to them when Magnus was young and say, remember this name, remember this guy. So, and you have some stories in your book, but for our listeners who haven't had a chance to read it yet, maybe you could share a few stories about what made him stand out.
Well, it was obvious from day one that the potential that is shown later, it was obvious from day one what he has done afterwards. So that was the perspective right away, I thought. At least that was my perspective. And perhaps it was a good perspective, because even if it hasn't become reality, it doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt to believe that you can become the next world champion. It's a good idea to think that anyway, actually, to be honest. But with him, it was for real. He had that potential. So I saw him. He was 9 years old. He played in a tournament in Norway with one of my students. He was a rook up against one of my students, and the other students were laughing because that guy was a rook down against this very little boy.
Mm-hmm.
But it was obvious, the talent was obvious, and he happened to live just a couple of kilometers from our school. So then he started training. I had an assistant at that time. He eventually became a grandmaster too, by the way, Torbjørn Ringdal Hansen. But at that time, that assistant, he was 20, and his rating was about 2000 or 2100 or something. But even he became a grandmaster. So we trained with him for the first year. We trained a little bit with the class too, with a regular chess group, which were not very good at that time. So, and the following years, until he was 13 approximately, I trained with him. He played a lot. I mean, really a lot. He played every blitz thing he could think that was around. He played all tournaments, and when he was 12, he traveled a year, played with his family. He played full time for a year when he was 12. So he's been given every opportunity that is possible to think of, and he has used it well. And I didn't see much when he was 13 till he started at my school when he was 15. But I saw how it was going. He was developing extremely fast even at that time. There were lots of warnings. Kasparov said that the apple was soon rotten and such things. But he kept on doing the things he believed in. And, well, he basically did what felt fun, I think, to put it simple. But the talent was enormous, so nothing could stop it.
Yeah, it's amazing in reviewing the history, reading what you wrote in your book, how sort of headstrong he was as a young kid, where, not, as you say, obviously he was immensely talented, but also he and you and his family seemed to have confidence and security in letting him pursue the aspects of the game that he enjoyed, rather than, say, listening to someone like Kasparov, although he was already pretty established by the time that they worked together. Was that a challenge to accept that he's putting a lot of time into chess, but he's going to do what he likes, as opposed to following some sort of strict regimen?
I think it just came natural, and that's been my philosophy all the time too. That you should just follow your instincts and on such things. So it's good enough. Magnus has shown that we are good enough. We don't really need those advice from the old Soviet players or wherever, whoever. We have the capacity. So and it's different things. For instance, now I played a lot of blitz on the net, and that worked. I remember Magnus kind of went over. It was kind of a he wasn't stabilized on the level. Then he took another step, and then he stabilized, and then he took another step. And I remember we played bug house a couple of weeks. We just played bug house every day because we thought it was so fun. And after that, Magnus suddenly raised to another level.
Oh, wow.
But we wouldn't repeat that. We wouldn't play bug house again next time. Next time we did happen to do something else, maybe. Well, but it's just that so it's no set formula how to do things, and that sometimes you hear these set formulas, and I think no, that's not how it works. And I heard, for instance, Michael Adams said something. I don't think Michael Adams had some trainer ever. But he's just said, if those trainers are so incredibly good, why aren't they better themselves?
Right.
That was his reasoning.
Yeah, famously self-taught. And congrats to Michael Adams. He just won the British championship again in his 50s as well. So,
yeah. But we have the capacity in Norway. That's what I've learned. So now we have we have more talents coming.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
It's growing, but it doesn't. They don't come by themselves. They come because there are people behind. It's not just because Magnus is there that these people grow and play well chess. It's because there are some people behind them, keeping clubs going. Such basic things. So we're totally dependent on the basic people. It's not only Magnus creating everything. It gives us enormous publicity, but that's not enough. But I think we are on a good track here now in Norway.
Yeah, and I think that's true everywhere where you need people at all levels. But we actually have supporters of Perpetual Chess can submit questions for the guests. So I have a few questions I'll be asking you, Simen, and that brings to mind the first one, which is from Greg Smith. Thank you for helping to support Perpetual Chess, Greg. So Greg was wondering, he says, are the live TV broadcasts of chess in Norway still bringing more new players to the game in Norway, or are they serving more as entertainment like football?
I think they're bringing an enormous amount of new players, but not many join chess clubs. I've heard there are some hundred thousands Norwegians who are members in chess.com, for instance. But the Norwegian Chess Federation has not increased in number, and the membership there. Actually, it's actually gone the other way a little bit, but it's now going up a little bit again. But no noticeable difference in the organized chess life, which is a bit strange. But perhaps it takes just a bit of time. But it also has something to do with the chess clubs, because they're not used to going out recruiting students. They're not so interested in taking advantage of all the interest that we get. They just want to sit there and play and do what they've always done.
That's interesting. I mean, I understand. I'm not surprised that it's not like a huge upswing in tournament players, but I would expect there to be some.
Not really at all, actually. So we're struggling with that. But I have perhaps it takes generations. I don't know. Perhaps the next generation after all those 40 years or whoever it is who's following this TV shows. They will perhaps bring it on to their sons and daughters. I don't know, but Holland is still a big chess nation after Max Euwe, I guess, in the 1930s, and so is Cuba, I guess, after Capablanca. So perhaps it's just a little bit lag or something, but the interest and the potential certainly is there. But Kasparov said one thing that I noticed, and I've been thinking the same. He said that it was just all about numbers. if you teach enough people chess in Africa, eventually a talent like Magnus will appear. And I've been thinking the same actually right away when I started as a full-time coach 25 years ago, that we just have to have courses um, everywhere as much as possible. And I thought we had courses at school and so on, and I thought it was 1 out of 1,000 perhaps became a chess player. I mean, 1 out of 1,000. That was my rule of thumb.
Wow.
But but many of the grandmasters we have now, for instance, Ludwig Hammer, he comes from one of our courses that we had 25 years ago. He perhaps wouldn't have started playing chess if he hadn't had that course at that school 25 years ago. And so having courses at schools, I still believe in such things. You have to have a from the broad basis, there might appear some top players.
Yeah. I
Connected.
mean, yeah, that certainly makes sense. And obviously now the infrastructure is in place, and your theory about maybe it taking generations, it makes me think of India, where Anand obviously is a legend,
Right.
but he's a bit older than Carlsen, and it seems like it's now where India is just absolutely exploding. So maybe Norway will be on that path in 15 years or so. But Simen, I'd like to hear a little bit about your own chess development, because you were truly a pioneer, the first Norwegian Grandmaster. And I mean, Magnus at least had you to show him the ropes. What was your development like?
Yeah. Well, when I was young, there were no Norwegian Grandmasters. Um, I wish I could. I wish I had a trainer. I didn't have a trainer until I became Grandmaster level. I think I became a Grandmaster and then got a trainer after that. That was before the World Junior Championship in 99. When I was 18 approximately. I became a Grandmaster at 18. I was the youngest in the world at that time, actually.
Was
And
that the World Junior where you came in second?
I came second, yes.
Wow. Yeah, beating out Anand. That was
Yeah,
amazing.
Anand was there, but he won the year after. That was his breakthrough. It wasn't, no one thought Anand would become world champion then. He was obviously talented, but I think he won the year after. I think it was in 87 he won. And then he played lots of tournaments in Spain, if I remember right.
Right.
And then eventually became a superstar. And I believe perhaps Toplo had some similar um, schedule. I think he also played lots of open tournaments in Spain before eventually becoming a superstar. So I believe in playing lots of tournaments. Um, at that time, I was kind of only half. I used to joke that if I trained half as much as the others, I would be twice as good as them. But I played a lot of soccer too, went to an ordinary school. I just played chess for fun, and I just happened to drift in that direction. And eventually, the football kind of took over. I suddenly came on the national team. I was on the national under 17 team as well. So I was quite good as a youngster too in soccer. But my plan was to play chess when I finished school and military service. But then I found it quite boring. It was incredibly lonesome, very lonesome. I had an endless confidence. I read notes from it. There's actually being a there's going to be written a book about me now. It's going to be released in just a month
Oh,
or
great.
two, actually. I think it will appear in English as well.
I look forward to that. You've had such a fascinating career. And here, let me ask you, do you feel like you were more talented looking back in football or in chess?
I was obviously more talented in chess. Uh, in chess, I believed that we could become the best in the world. It was nothing wrong with my confidence. If that was reality or not, it doesn't really matter. But I had that confidence, I know for sure, because I had it written down in my the diaries. But but it was boring, and I think I've learned a lot from it. It could be very boring being a chess player. lonely, and such things. So everything I kind of missed in my own chess career is what I'm trying to bring on uh, to the youngsters now. I think that you need chess environment, people to go to tournaments together with and hang around with after the games and so on.
Yeah, it's really important. I agree. And do you feel like Magnus had that as he was coming up?
Magnus has been a bit of a loner because he was so good at such a young age. But he's traveled with his family all the time. His father's been there all the time. That's a little bit different. But I think that was important for him too, because perhaps the best, that's one of the main things I've given him, is simply friends. Because he had other chess people. I think my students are his best friends today, even. So he often brought just a friend, while the others brought a strong grandmaster. Magnus simply brought a friend the same age as his, because he had a chess, no problems with that. He just wanted to have someone to play and have fun with.
Yeah,
If I
yeah.
understood correctly.
That makes sense. And back to the topic of football. So your former student and friend Tarjei Svensson, of course, has written about you for Chess24 and now at chess.com, where he reported on your most recent victory. I asked him to send me some info on you. I mean, obviously, again, I've read your book, very familiar with your career, but I don't know you like he does. And he said to ask you how your knee injury affected not. So you had in soccer/football a career-ending knee injury, unfortunately, and he asked how it affected not only your football career but also your chess career.
That's absolutely true. It wasn't only a knee injury, it was everything. It started with a knee injury, but my whole system collapsed, to put it simple. I mean, the whole system, really everything. Brain, breathing, my whole body simply didn't work for a couple of years. So it was a couple of very, very hard years, and it changed my values, everything. So it was impossible to play chess, and everything kind of collapsed, to put it simple.
Wow.
And since then, I've kind of just played occasionally, and it's never been the same. It's no fun competing and you're running on half machine, to put it that way. That's how it's been feeling for me the last, well, at least it felt like that between 25 and 40 approximately. So when I was 40, I started going to singing lessons actually. And that's how I kind of solved my breathing problems. I had problems for 15 years breathing, the problems with my back for 10 years, but I had another knee operation that actually solved my back problems, but I was struggling with that for 10 years. So didn't concentrate. I could occasionally it worked, but often it didn't. And I never knew exactly when I was in kind of form or not. But it didn't matter. I had got a family, I had 3 kids. It didn't really matter. I was more focused on bringing up new chess players. And I started the chess school when I was 30. And then at the first year, I kind of thought I had to get out of this, I had to get a proper job. I wasn't sure I could have a proper job, actually. I had a proper education. I was a political scientist by education, but I wasn't sure I was able to work, to be honest, with all these problems.
Jeez.
So I thought I might just continue having this chess school as it is something I could do. And then I thought, when I got a little bit better, I thought I have to do something proper job or something. Then I just have to keep it going a little further because Magnus is there. I have to keep it going till he becomes 16. And then it's been like that for then another guy is coming. Then suddenly Ariantari was there. There are often always someone coming that I kind of had to keep it going. But now I'm 56. I'm just very happy I'm there. I don't want to do anything else in my life at the moment. I just want to play and have fun with my students and no stress. I don't need any. I don't have any ambitions, working ambitions or anything. So if I had this attitude when I was 25, um, Like Anand, for instance, I remember I talked to him when I was 22 or something. I was curious about meaning of life and such things. I remember he said, it's just about making dollars." I remember he said, and I remember, well, what about girls? Oh, it's all been organized. It's all
Right.
been organized for him.
Yeah.
But uh, yeah, I wasn't quite happy with the I didn't kind of soul those things. I believe I had a chess talent, but first of all I got sick. But or first of all I didn't have the motivation. I was struggling with all the meaning of life, with being lonesome and such things. If I had someone clever around me at that time, I perhaps could have done made a proper chess career. But
Yeah.
as it was, I was quite on my own. Then it was so much easier just go back to soccer where you have a proper trainer. Especially since my trainer at that time was Egil Olsen. He became the national coach of Norway just a couple of years after, and he brought Norway to two world championships. That was my club trainer. He was the one that brought me back to the soccer
Okay.
when I thought I was going to play chess full time. That was my ambition. I didn't train at all at winter time in Norway. The football season started in March or something, or even May. Not in March, perhaps even May, but April. I didn't train the whole winter, but then this coach said, "You can just come back. It doesn't matter if you haven't trained the whole winter." So I went back. I kept playing chess tournaments. I could go away for a couple of weeks, and I came back to the team. And this autumn, without having trained the whole winter, I came on the national team, which was a huge surprise. And then there was kind of no way back because then there are suddenly contracts, a lot of pressure, uh, very much stress. So then suddenly I didn't play soccer for fun any longer, which meant I didn't play so well either. It was very stressful at that time, especially since the chess people want me to play chess too. I was at my peak, number 6 in the world at that time, and but chess people complained I was not playing much chess. And so, for instance, but I did play a little bit. For instance, in Belgrade, I played a super tournament with Kasparov and so on. I wish I had played against Scotland instead. I had the chance to play against Scotland for Norway. And after that, the national coach said, "Well, he kind of had enough. He saw that I was giving priority to chess instead of soccer. I regret that a little bit, I must say.
So you regret that particular decision too.
Yeah, I wish I kind of. It's not every day you get a chance to play on the national team, so uh, I tried to combine it.
I
But
mean,
I had accepted an invitation some months ago. You don't say no. That was my attitude at the moment. I had accepted and I kept to my promise. It was as simple as that.
yeah, I mean, it makes sense in hindsight. I mean, it's a unique problem to be so good at both sort of very different endeavors. And Tarjei has written that you, at some point as a professional, turned down a lucrative offer to play football professionally in Turkey.
That's true. Besiktas, they were there. I could have gone to Besiktas in Turkey, but I said no. I wasn't kind of mentally prepared. I had no one to talk to. I had no assistance. I was completely on my own in this completely new situation. I knew nothing about contracts. Uh, I was all on my own, which I wish I had someone to help me. That would have been wonderful.
How old were you?
And at that time, 22, not very mature, I think,
Okay.
maybe
Yeah,
23.
yeah. And then the injuries started, you said, when you were 25?
Yeah, approximately when I was 24 or something. Then the
Wow.
horrible situation started, yes.
Yeah, and Tarjei has written that you were basically an A-list celebrity in Norway, and then you have all these injuries, and you go from having two incredibly lucrative careers to possibly you're not sure if you have any once you have the injuries, because you would think if you have a soccer injury, it won't affect your chest, but as you mentioned, because of the breathing issues. So you said it was a rough couple years. How did you manage to pull yourself out of it, Simen?
Well, it was absolutely horrible. It was after I had a few operations, and after one, when I woke up, it went after a week. I could barely breathe. My my shoulders were aching, and soon after, my arms were aching. My whole body was aching. I couldn't sleep at night. I didn't sleep for half a year almost. So it was absolutely horrible. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't read newspapers. I couldn't read anything. So that was absolutely horrible. I thought I should just do nothing. I didn't kind of do nothing for 1.5 years. Absolutely nothing. I mean, I thought maybe relaxing would be good, but it's not just to relax like that. I improved gradually, but not very much. And I still had to finish my final thesis in political science. After 1.5 years, I thought, okay, I just have to live with this. So then I went down to Africa, actually. I wrote my final thesis there on Southern Africa. I traveled around for a month, and then I just wrote it down without using books, actually, because I managed to read. So that was very good, just to get that in, because I wasn't happy without. I managed to finish it. And since then, uh, Um, I got my chess column back. I had a chess column, but I thought I couldn't write that one as well. But I could. I could write on machine. I thought I couldn't, but I could. And then in 1997 we went to Australia. I got a kid in 1996. And when I'm born in 67, so that means I was 29, I think. 29. So when so then we went to Australia a year. It was just to get away from everything. That was the only purpose, just to get away all the the horrible years. And when we returned from Australia, I had married then, which was very good for me. And then I started this test school. And that's kind of also because I thought it was definitely an idea I had. But it's also kind of a thing I did because I wasn't sure I was capable of working at all, actually.
Wow. I mean, really, really amazing. So when you look back on both your chess highlights, I mean, you drew Karpov in a like a 2-game match. Obviously played for the national team 9 times, and then an incredible career as a trainer. But also football. You mentioned scoring in your interview with Judith. She mentioned scoring a very important goal, but I didn't catch the details. Was there one, like, is there a career highlight goal of yours
Uh,
from football?
it wasn't very important. It was just a training match against Czechoslovakia,
Okay.
which existed at that time. It doesn't. I played against
Right.
Yugoslavia too, by the way. I
Right.
played against both Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, and France and Italy and other good countries, by the way. But as I was in top form against Czechoslovakia and I scored a goal. It was just the feeling of scoring on the national team. It was an ecstatic feeling. It is on the net, actually. It's possible to see it on the net.
Okay.
You can see
Yeah.
the goal.
I'll link to that and I'll be sure to check it out myself. But so if you reflect on your 20s, do you tend to think of chess or soccer/football first?
The thing is that I had a lot. My best memories from soccer is from before I came on the national team. I just love playing soccer, having fun, and that's when I did the best. When it was like that. When I came on the national team, became a job. It became stressful. I couldn't just go away playing chess tournaments like I used to because I was being paid for being a football player. So. So my football career was wonderful until I came on the national team. After that, it became stressful. And when I when I got injured, then it became absolutely horrible. Then now I almost don't manage to look at soccer.
Wow.
I'm not interested in even in the national team. I don't look at it. I just get bad feelings about it actually.
Wow. But if you play soccer again / football with your chess students, it's still fun.
Pardon?
But if you play a casual game of football with your chess students, that's still fun.
I cannot. That's the thing. I cannot. I can, but I will start aching after the next day. My knee will hurt.
Okay.
So that's why I get reminded of these things.
Yeah.
Because I wish I could play with my students, but I cannot. So it's a reminder. I wish I hadn't. I wish I stopped playing football before I came on national team, and maybe I could have played a few matches. Then I just left it and started doing something else because I wasn't that. Uh, uh, I'm not interested in titles and such things. For instance, now winning the Norwegian Championship the 9th time, it doesn't matter for me. But it matters for me that to realize that my brain still works.
Right.
That I'm not getting Alzheimer. I'm thinking about such things now.
I mean, it makes sense. You've been through a lot, and I mean, I'm 46, and I'm obviously I used to be 2,100 feet. It's going down all the time, but nonetheless, when I play a decent game, that's what I enjoy. Like that, I still can play okay from time to time. So at your level, I can only imagine.
Exactly, it's the same. It's just going. Now, when I think back on my soccer career, I remember just as well some goal I scored on a random training 40 years ago. I can remember that more than just as well as I remember this goal that I scored on the national team. And
Wow.
those are the memories I love to linger on.
And let me ask you, I mean, obviously there's more to life than money, but you turned down a lot of money to play in Turkey. Were you well compensated in your time as a professional footballer?
Um, not compared to these days, not at all. I remember I got 300,000 crowns, which is about 250. How much is it? 25,000 euro, $25,000 a year or something.
Oh wow, yeah, not
Uh,
not
which
not like
which
these
was
days.
which was a lot for me when I was 24, 25. But a
Wow,
few years later, football players got much more paid, of course.
yeah.
So it was nothing enormous. It was nothing that I could live my life on forever or something
But
economically.
it strikes me as an unusual mindset at 22 to turn down a lot more money, even if you're gonna feel socially uncomfortable.
Yeah, I wasn't interested in money. It didn't motivate me. But as I said, I could have used some assistance with some clever, simple adult, to put it
Yeah,
simple.
yeah,
Uh, and what suddenly I got offers from all the clubs in Norway, the best clubs in Norway wanted me to play, but I had no idea about contracts. If it felt like being a slavery, if I would stop playing soccer, well, if I should go to another club, someone had to buy me. Such things
right.
didn't seem natural for me at all. So, but it was uh, again. I wish I'm trying to be that person that I needed at that time for younger people now, to put it that way.
That's beautiful. That's
Magnus has his
touching.
father, but then my brother eventually became his manager,
Right.
financial his manager. But there are other Norwegians, young players who have no help at all. So I'm trying to be a system on basic things. I mean, really basic. It could be like just ordering a plane ticket. Some
Yeah.
of my students, some of my big talents need to learn such things, and you have to be able to do such things if you are going to be a professional chess player.
Yeah, and I've noticed that a lot of top chess players are not necessarily detail oriented. You would think that they are, but they struggle with like where their keys are and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, and just to accept that being a chess player, it's wonderful when you win, but but as everyone knows, you don't always win, and it's horrible when you lose. That's
Yeah.
just the way it is.
Yeah. Well
Such
said.
basic things is it's okay to be reminded of.
Yeah. Well, Simen, Tarjei gave me some more stories to ask you about. One of which was legendary Latvian / Spanish GM Alexei Shirov came to visit and stayed at your house, and he said there's a story that goes along with that.
There are stories everywhere. I don't know what he's thinking about, but perhaps he's thinking about it. I think Alexei just he stayed at my parents' house. We played a little match. We were kind of pals a little bit. He was, I'm not sure if he came from Latvia. He was a bit similar as me. I don't think Latvia had such big traditions when he came around, but chess traditions.
Well, they had tall.
Perhaps he's
They
yeah, he
had
had
tall.
Tal, of course, but then they were part of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
But I wonder if Tara is thinking that about that Alexei had just got a girlfriend from Argentina. Is that the story you're thinking about?
He didn't specify. He married an Argentinian woman, isn't that? Didn't
Oh
he?
yes, I
Yeah.
think he married because they had to, because they were Catholics or something.
Okay.
They compromised on living in Spain or something. But I think they had just met. They met in a tournament in Buenos Aires and met again next year, and then they had to marry or something. But you have to ask him about the details there.
Okay.
But I just remember he called to Argentina. That was expensive at that time, so he used to call at the middle of the night because he stayed in the room where the phone was. There was no mobile phone at that time. It was expensive. So my father was walking outside the room, trying to show his existence. But he kept talking.
Yeah. So I'm just to give some context for listeners, we're talking about a time when there was no email, obviously no texting, no cell phones, and to call someone, a lover from across the world, it's going to be, it could be hundreds of dollars easily. So the thing,
That's
things,
true. That's
things,
true.
things
You're
have
old
changed
enough
a
to know
lot.
that. Good.
Yeah, exactly. Things have changed a lot. Okay, next story that Tarjei mentioned was he asked how it was facing Kasparov in super tournaments.
How it was facing him. Yeah. And I had some problems facing these old legendary guys because I had complexes. I thought I was meeting God, and
Right.
I thought I had to play like God. Uh, that's what I learned. You don't have to play better, and I lacked my confidence totally. I thought I had to play much better than normal. But so I lost to the two first games in a horrible way, and in the third time I kind of learned. Then at least I played a proper game. I think I was better at some moment too. But then he tricked me in time trouble and he beat me again. So I lost to him 3 times. He was much better than everyone else. So that's for sure. That was at least my experience.
And was he uniquely intimidating?
Intimidating. It wasn't very. I'm not sure what you mean. Intimidating.
Was he especially scary to face?
Yeah, it
Even
was because of his grimaces, pulling faces. What's it called?
yeah.
So you feel his energy when you play him. That's for sure. But I don't think he did it on purpose. But you just feel it. So but it was interesting. So and I realized just the few games with him was I learned a lot about from it. And later on, when my students, for instance, we played one of my students or of my students played a sim against Kasparov. And that happened in 2000 in New York. Kasparov was organizing a world championship for schools, so called. And my school won it, and we won a sim with Kasparov. And one of my students played a draw against Kasparov. And another one declined a draw offer. So that was I had kind of prepared them mentally. I think that was the reasoning why how they managed to do those things.
And on the topic of Kasparov, Simen, Tarjei also mentioned that he came to Norway to visit Magnus at some point.
Yes, it was I came to Norway in 2000. Well, when Magnus was 14 approximately, because a film crew was about to finish a documentary on Magnus.
Oh, right. The
And
film.
I think Magnus maybe was 13, I'm not sure, 14. And he was at he was picked up in with a limousine on the airport. He was they had him in the best suite at the best hotel in Oslo. And when we had him for dinner, we invited a cook from the Norwegian national cooking team to make the
Wow.
dinner. It was like that all the time. And there were about 15 people there. Kasparov talked all the time for 5 hours.
Huh.
Then I kind of tried to, well, we have a little talent here. Perhaps I tried to get him focused on Magnus a little bit. Magnus had just played him recently, I think. And then after a little while, it turned to Magnus and then suddenly asked, "Can you name your 3 favorite Aljekin games?" I wouldn't be able to name a single Aljekin game, I must admit. I think most of the top players wouldn't. So, but then Magnus started thinking, and then there were some discussing Aljekin games. Because Magnus had read his books and he had some comments on some ideas about some of his comments or something. And then suddenly Kasparov got very interested. And a couple of weeks later, he called me personally on the phone, perhaps with KGB listening, I don't know.
Right.
But and then I was oh, I always wonder how good they can become. I was very perplexed by having Kasparov on the phone. And then Kasparov simply stated, I know he can become the next number one, but it's absolutely critical what he's doing the next couple of years. The apple is soon rotten. He sent something like that. And then he went over to Kasparov. He had a little training session with him. It was basically his trainers actually, not, but it was a little bit Kasparov himself too. My brother had a chance to join them. I couldn't because I was in South Africa with my other students. I think Magnus learned a lot from that. But then Kasparov gave a homework which seemed horribly boring. He was supposed to go to analyze 4 games that he had lost, 4 hours each game, and no computers. And Magnus didn't bother to do that, and that was the end of that connection at that time.
Yeah, it's such a legendary story to me. The idea that Magnus was so sure of himself that the world champion, Kasparov, the biggest legend of all time, tells you to do these things to take your game to the next level. And he's just like, whatever, I don't need to do this.
I'm not sure if it's because he was sure of himself. I think it just didn't bother. It just used to do whatever he feels like at any time. So
Yeah.
he just didn't. He's just lazy or something.
Yeah, but I mean, he is and he isn't because he pursues his interests nonetheless. I mean, he's obviously got a immense intellectual curiosity. It's just he only wants to pursue it on his terms. I think it's instructive. And
so many things about Magnus is that is just incredible. It's a lot more as behind this that hasn't come out. But against all odds, his talent is simply too big. Despite everything he's done, is the best in the world.
Can you think of an example of something that hasn't come out that you think is
many?
Can you give us one?
I'm not sure about the details, but I have a feeling, for instance, I'm not sure. Maybe I shouldn't go out with it because I don't know. But I'm not sure how much assistance he got when. I've been on training camps with Magnus. He has the best trainers in the world. Everyone is working very hard, except Magnus, because everyone is there except Magnus sometimes. But somehow he seems to know everything anyway. So it's not true that Magnus is not well prepared. He's enormously well prepared. But I wonder how he does it because he's doing it his way for sure.
Yeah, and
sometimes you think it's despite all the things he do, he's the best in the world.
Right.
But sometimes it could also be because he's doing it this way. he's the best.
And you tell a few stories in your books of, and obviously there's stuff like this on YouTube where like you show him a position and he knows exactly what game it is and in exactly what year. Having observed him read these books, is how deeply is he reading them? Is he spending like many minutes per page, or is he just kind of scanning them?
I think he has a photographic memory or something. So it's no systematic at all. He just picks a book from just any big book, or that's what he used to do. I'm not sure about how it is now.
Right.
But he remembers everything, just even year and where things are played and so on. Or at least that's what he did. And he had that ability from birth, probably. But
Yeah.
surely had that ability in chess from when I started training with him when he was 9. So now people, or many years later, people get impressed because he played blind simul against 10 lawyers from Harvard or something.
Right.
There's absolutely nothing that he played a blind simul against my 10 players when he was 15 before he had started at my school. That was the best junior players in Norway, and he won 7.5, 2.5.
Wow.
So now people get impressed by things he's been doing for years, since he was very little.
Yeah. And on a maybe related topic of Magnus marching to the beat of his own drum, a listener, a supporter of the podcast, David Lazarus, asked, he says, what do you think is the proper way to determine the world champion in chess?
Well, perhaps the old way isn't a really proper way, because that was where old Soviet style, I think, with a lot of advantages for the world champion. He could just sit there for 3 years, and now he can sit there for 2 years, I think. But it's a long tradition, so it's not so easy to change a tradition that is kind of like these traditions.
Mm-hmm.
So, but now suddenly blitz and rapid chess and all kinds of other things has become um, attractive. And thanks to Magnus, perhaps. Magnus has showed interest, and then it becomes attractive winning those championships. So I think maybe it's just good that you have 3 different styles: classic, rapid, and blitz. Well, I don't know. The rating is good. The rating shows who's the best.
Yeah.
And that's most important, I guess.
Yeah. But you were at Magnus's first world championship in 2013. What are your memories of that match?
Well, I came there after a couple of weeks into the match. I just fallen, so I just broken my whole face. Actually, I could barely had to move it 1 centimeter. But so I was a little injured. But it was, of course, fantastic. It was an absolute adventure. Everyone was there, kind of all the newspapers. Everyone was following it on TV. Got enormous attention. So that was a huge moment for sure.
Yeah, incredible.
Everyone was there except his second, to put it that way.
And who that would be? Who was his second?
Ludwig Hammer.
Ah, okay.
If I've understood right, Magnus became world champion on his own without having a second, at least not there.
Right. Amazing.
It says something. I'm not sure about this because I don't know the details. But Ludwig was not there. He came after Magnus had become world champion, and he got a chance to just feel it. But
Yeah.
I think he had 5 seconds or something. I think Ludwig Hammer was the main one who was supposed to communicate with Magnus directly, but he wasn't there.
Okay. And for those of you watching on YouTube, for listeners, there's a picture in the background where you can see a young Magnus, but then there's kind of a throng of kids, and there's an older woman, and Magnus is shaking hands with another kid. Simen, could you, for those who are watching, explain the story behind that picture?
Yeah, this is 2 weeks after he became world champion. Magnus has never loved talking to the press, to put it that way. So 2 weeks after, we collected the whole chess press community in Norway. It was about 40 journalists that came. The prime minister came, and the culture minister, the mayor in the local town, and at the same time we had a chess tournament. There were lots of kids everywhere, 180 kids in this little room here. We have an adult tournament. So we had the kind of anti advertise the tournament. We're going to have a tournament, but we definitely couldn't tell anyone that Magnus was coming. Then it would have exploded completely.
Right.
So then he came in as a huge rock and roll star, and then so this was a huge moment.
That must have been quite an adjustment to reach that level of fame. Having been pretty well known in Norway in your 20s, did you have any advice for Magnus, like as he went from being a great chess player to being like a national celebrity?
Well, I had the idea when I wrote this book about him when he was 13. I had some doubts because what will this do to a little kid, 13 years old, a book about him already? But then I thought, with this perspective that he will eventually meet, he will become world famous. You just have to get used to it. I had ideas like that, like the royal family or something.
Right.
Perhaps it's good, but it's impossible to say, of course. But it's just part of it. You have to get used to dealing with the fame.
Yeah.
To be able to do what he's doing. So he simply has to deal with it. I think he's doing it quite well.
Yeah, I agree.
Relatively well.
Yeah.
Put it that way. It could have been worse. But sometimes it doesn't look so good, obviously. But it could have been worse. I think he's found a way to accept that it's part of his life, being famous.
Makes sense. And I had one more question from Tarjei, who mentioned that one of the things he learned from you was your materialistic chess style, and that one of the keys that you impart to your students is to always capture pieces.
Yeah, Magnus, I cannot play like Magnus because Magnus can just sacrifice something on intuition and get away with it. So Magnus is different from me in that aspect for sure. When I just sacrifice something, I don't trust my instinct at all, I must say. So it's just a simpler perspective. Taking a piece is at least something. It's much more difficult to value some initiative, long-term initiative. Horribly difficult. A pawn is a pawn, much simpler. It's as simple as that. But modern chess is different. The players are better. They're better at evaluating things like initiative, long-term compensation, and such things.
Yeah, it's a lot different. Neural nets have taught us a lot.
I have a lot of weaknesses as a chess player. This is one of my weaknesses. I'm not capable of just sacrificing and just playing on calmly, to put it that way.
So you were more of a solid, are more of a solid.
I have so many deficits, but yeah, I'm more. I'm known for being materialistic, but I think the others are. Oh, the good players also are materialistic. I often hear Aronian saying, "I love grabbing pawns," and so on. And because people often think that your opponent has seen something, but very often they haven't. They just hope.
Right.
They sacrifice something and they hope the best. But if you calculate a little bit, sometimes it's just not quite correct.
Yeah,
You can grab that pawn, actually.
I just had a game against Grandmaster Andrew Tang where he bluffed me. I could have taken a pawn and didn't. And
right. It's the same with the openings. Yeah. Often my students think that their opponents know a lot of openings, but they don't. If I know how little openings I know, and I'm a grandmaster, and if they meet some 2,000 players, they don't know enormously much about openings.
There you have it. There you have it from the 9-time Norwegian champion himself, that no one knows anything.
Yeah, it's not. People forget.
Yeah.
Openings are like fresh meat. it gets old very fast. You just forget it if you don't look at chess every day. If you prepare something, it will perhaps last for the next game, and the day after, at least me, then I've forgotten my preparation. I have to prepare before every game, and I just accepted that's how it is.
Yeah. I certainly feel the same way. Well, Simen, this has been amazing. I mean, you've had such an incredible career touching so many different aspects of chess and obviously other fields. So I wanted to thank you, and I'm wondering, do you have any other stories to share before we let you go?
There are stories everywhere, but thanks for the attention. It was nice talking to you.
Oh, it's a true honor. You've contributed so much to chess. So, and Simen's book, which is now available with New in Chess, is called "How Magnus Became the Youngest GM in the World." You can still get it on Kindle. You can get it in the New in Chess reader. I'm writing a chess book, and you're quoted in it. So I drew from that book in it. But I look forward to the new book. Do you know what the title will be in English, Simen?
The chess that was. In Norwegian. It's kind of the chess that was before Magnus Carlsen, before internet,
okay,
and before computers.
Okay.
And it's not only about me, it's the people I met in the 80s and Spassky, Kasparov, Karpov, but not only the best players in the world, also local players in the club. But the chess environment seen through my eyes and career, to put it that way.
Sounds great, and what a career it has been, spanning highs as you've mentioned, but some difficult times as well. So I really appreciate your sharing your perspective, Simen.
Thank you.